When we look at the story of humankind, one pattern becomes strikingly clear. We spend much of our lives waking up each morning and automatically stepping into routines written not by us, but by centuries of habit, expectation, and social design. We wake, we move, we perform, yet rarely do we pause to ask why. Today, I want to invite you into a small but radical rebellion, captured in three simple words: stop, wake, smile. These words are not just a slogan, they are an interruption, an intentional crack in the automatic flow of your life. They call you to stop the unconscious momentum, to wake not just from sleep, but from mental autopilot, and to smile, not as a mask, but as an act of reclaiming your inner agency. In a world overflowing with noise, speed, and pressure, these three words are a reminder that your mind is still yours, your story is still unwritten, and your next step can still be chosen with awareness rather than inherited by default. In the long narrative of human existence, our faces have become some of the most sophisticated instruments ever produced by nature. Across millennia, they have served as maps of meaning, broadcasting fear, hope, trust, and intention long before language existed. Yet in modern times, this miraculous instrument has been subtly repurposed. Instead of conveying our truth, it is often used to conceal it. And perhaps the most widespread symbol of this concealment is the simple, everyday phenomenon of the fake smile. We have shaped entire cultures around it, embedding it into workplaces, social rituals, customer service roles, and even friendships. It has become so normalized that many people cannot easily distinguish between the smile that emerges from genuine inner resonance and the one that flickers across the face merely out of obligation. But beneath this seemingly harmless gesture lies a deeper story about the psychological weight we carry and the expectations that silently sculpt our emotional lives. To understand why we rely so heavily on fake smiles, we must step back from the individual and observe the broader system. We live in societies where efficiency, stability, and predictability are valued almost above everything else. Genuine emotions are unpredictable. They disrupt patterns. They reveal vulnerability. They can make interactions less convenient and more complex. So, consciously or not, we create norms that encourage emotional smoothing, a kind of internal ironing out of the wrinkles of discomfort. The fake smile becomes a convenient symbol of this smoothing process. It allows the machinery of daily life to run without interruption. But every time a person lifts the corners of their mouth without the support of authentic feeling, they create a small fracture between their inner state and outer expression. One fracture may seem insignificant, but repeated thousands of times across years, across relationships, across workplaces, these fractures accumulate into something much more serious, a disconnection from the self. We often imagine that the human mind is a stable, secure entity sealed inside the skull. But in reality, much of who we are is shaped by the signals we repeatedly send out and the responses they evoke. When a person constantly expresses an emotion they do not feel, the mind begins to reorganize itself around the performance rather than the truth. The body learns that its genuine signals are not welcome. The brain begins to adapt to the social demand for emotional compliance. Over time, this creates a subtle erosion of inner clarity. You may begin to lose track of what you actually feel because you spend so much energy projecting what you believe others want to see. The fake smile, repeated daily, can become less a voluntary gesture and more an automatic reflex. And when authenticity becomes reflexively suppressed, the self becomes diluted. This suppression carries psychological costs. Human emotions exist not to embarrass or inconvenience us, but to guide, warn, soothe, and inform. Anger signals a boundary that has been crossed. Sadness signals a need for care or reflection. Fear signals the presence of a threat. Joy signals the presence of meaning or connection. None of these emotions are random. Each has a biological and evolutionary purpose. When we mask these emotions habitually with a fake smile, we interfere with the internal navigation system that keeps us oriented in life. It is like placing decorative stickers over the instruments of an airplane cockpit. The pilots may still fly for a while, but eventually the lack of accurate feedback leads to confusion, misjudgment, and emotional turbulence. On a collective level, the dominance of fake smiling has created a paradoxical emotional landscape. On the surface, interactions appear smoother and more pleasant than ever. Social media amplifies this by encouraging constant displays of positivity. Everywhere we look, there are smiling faces, selling products, experiences, lifestyles, and identities. But beneath this hyper-curated surface lies a growing sense of emotional detachment. Many people feel unseen, not because others are unkind, but because the entire system discourages the expression of truth. Genuine emotional connection becomes harder to establish when both sides are participating in the same performance. If everyone is smiling, who is suffering? If everyone is smiling, who is longing for understanding? If everyone is smiling, who is courageous enough to say, "I'm not okay"? The fake smile also has ethical implications. It represents a silent contract in which honesty is traded for acceptability. In many environments, particularly workplaces, people feel obligated to present a facade of positivity to maintain professionalism. But this expectation is not neutral, it reinforces power imbalances. Those in subordinate positions must often smile to avoid conflict, appease authority, or maintain their livelihood. The smile becomes a survival mechanism rather than an expression of goodwill. When individuals are forced to perform positivity to secure their place in the system, we must ask, what does this say about the system itself? And at what point does the demand for politeness shift into a demand for emotional obedience? The deeper question is not whether fake smiles are inherently bad, but whether they are consuming too much territory in our emotional landscape. A society becomes fragile when its members habitually conceal their true states. Genuine emotional expression is not a threat to stability. On the contrary, it is essential for resilience. When people are allowed to express their real feelings, relationships deepen, teams collaborate more honestly, conflicts are resolved before they escalate, and individuals maintain a stronger sense of identity. Authentic expression creates the kind of trust that cannot be manufactured or forced. It is the glue that holds communities together. Without it, social cohesion becomes brittle, held together by thank you gestures rather than meaningful bonds. One of the most significant consequences of relying on fake smiles is the distortion of self-perception. When you repeatedly signal to the world that you are fine, even when you are not, you may begin to believe that your emotions are either unimportant or inappropriate. You may start judging yourself for feeling sad, tired, overwhelmed, or frustrated, as though these emotions indicate some kind of personal failure. This internalization of emotional judgment can lead to chronic stress, burnout, and a diminished sense of self-worth. The fake smile becomes a mask that you eventually forget how to remove. And without intentional effort, the mask becomes your identity. Children too learn from the emotional expressions they see around them. When they observe adults constantly smiling despite visible tension, they internalize the belief that emotions must be hidden to maintain social harmony. They learn to equate politeness with self-silencing. Over time, they develop emotional reflexes that mimic the adults around them. This continues generation after generation until emotional suppression becomes a deep cultural habit. And like any habit, it feels natural even when it is harmful. To stop the cycle of fake smiling, one must first cultivate awareness. Many people are not even conscious of how often they perform this gesture. It happens automatically in social interactions, like a conditioned response. The first step is noticing the moments when your mouth moves without your heart participating. You might catch yourself smiling when someone makes a request you disagree with, or when you are uncomfortable, or when you want to avoid confrontation. These moments are not signs of weakness. They are clues pointing toward opportunities for self-understanding. Once awareness is established, the next step is to reintroduce honesty into your expressions. Not through dramatic reveals or confrontational behaviors, but through gentle recalibration. If your instinct is to smile to avoid tension, you might practice softening your expression instead. If someone expects a cheerful reaction and you do not feel it, you might hold a neutral expression and respond calmly without forcing positivity. The goal is not to reject smiling altogether, but to restore intention behind it. A genuine smile carries a different quality. It is lighter, unforced, radiant in a way that cannot be imitated. When it arises authentically, it resonates with others far more deeply than any polite performance ever could. Yet authenticity requires courage. It means accepting that not every moment is a pleasant one. It means risking small inconveniences in conversation. It means valuing truth over smoothness. It means trusting that your real emotions, when expressed respectfully, are valid. The path toward emotional authenticity is not about disrupting social norms, but about infusing them with greater honesty. It is about allowing human complexity to exist in a world that often pretends everything is simple. There is also a biological dimension to this shift. The human nervous system responds directly to the disparity between inner feelings and outer expressions. When you smile while feeling distressed, the body experiences stress because it is receiving conflicting messages. This mismatch activates the stress response, creating tension in the muscles, increasing heart rate, and straining the mind. Over long periods, this chronic internal conflict can contribute to anxiety, fatigue, and emotional numbness. Conversely, when your outer expressions align with your inner reality, the body relaxes, the mind becomes clearer, emotional energy flows more naturally. Authenticity is not just a moral or psychological ideal, it is a physiological relief. Stopping fake smiles also reshapes interpersonal dynamics. When one person chooses authenticity, it quietly grants permission for others to do the same. The atmosphere becomes less performative and more human. People become more willing to share concerns, fears, hopes, and honest reactions. Conversations deepen. Misunderstandings are reduced. Empathy increases because authenticity makes people more readable. In such environments, trust builds not through constant positivity, but through consistency between words, expressions, and actions. There is another layer to consider. The fake smile is not simply an individual act, but part of a larger cultural narrative that equates constant positivity with moral virtue. Society often celebrates people who maintain cheerful demeanors, describing them as strong, inspiring, or admirable. But true strength is not the ability to hide one's pain behind a smile. True strength is the ability to face one's inner reality without distorting it. It is the ability to exist in emotional truth, even when that truth is not convenient or socially rewarded. When you stop using fake smiles as default, you begin to rewrite your personal narrative. You reclaim the right to express your emotions without apology. You rediscover the nuanced language of your inner world, the full spectrum of feelings that make you human. This reclamation is not an act of rebellion, but an act of restoration. It reconnects you with the original purpose of emotional expression, communication, alignment, connection, survival, meaning a life lived without fake smiles is not a life lived without smiles. On the contrary, it is a life in which genuine smiles become more frequent, more luminous, more grounded in real experience. When you smile because you feel joy, or warmth, or connection, the smile is not a mask, but a bridge. It communicates something authentic, something that resonates deeply with others. People can feel the difference, not consciously, but intuitively. Humans are evolutionarily attuned to detect authenticity. A real smile carries micro-expressions, subtle muscular patterns, and emotional signals that cannot be replicated by force. It shines from within. C. Choosing to stop fake smiles does not mean rejecting social grace. It means elevating it. It means redefining politeness as honesty without aggression, presence without performance, empathy without self-betrayal. It means engaging with others in a way that honors both your truth and theirs. It means approaching life with open eyes rather than through the fog of emotional pretense. If enough people make this shift, even quietly, the cultural narrative changes. Workplaces become more humane, relationships become more resilient, friendships become more meaningful, families become more emotionally fluent, children grow up learning that their feelings are valid and do not need to be hidden behind obligatory cheerfulness. The collective emotional landscape becomes more authentic, more honest, and ultimately more stable because it is built on truth rather than performance. And in the quiet moments of your own life, when you stand in front of a mirror, or reflect at the end of the day, or notice the subtle sensations of your body, you will begin to experience a new kind of internal alignment. The pressure to perform will ease. The distance between who you are and who you pretend to be will narrow. And in that narrowing, you will rediscover a sense of integrity that no amount of forced smiling could ever provide. Awakening authentic inner signals requires a kind of subtle courage that rarely receives recognition, but remains essential for any human being who wishes to live with clarity rather than confusion. For most of our lives, we are trained, sometimes directly, often indirectly, to distrust our own internal cues. We learn to override our instincts, silence our intuitions, and reinterpret our feelings through the filters of social expectation. But if we observe humanity on a long timeline, long before the construction of modern societies, our inner signals were not vague whispers, they were instruments of survival. They guided early humans away from danger, toward nourishment, toward trustworthy alliances, and toward meaning. Over thousands of years, however, external structures took over many of these functions, and in the process, they reshaped how we relate to our inner world. We developed systems that reward predictability more than sensitivity, compliance more than curiosity, and emotional performance more than emotional accuracy. Awakening inner signals, therefore, is not simply a psychological exercise, but a return to a lost part of our evolutionary intelligence. From childhood onward, many of us absorb the belief that our inner reactions are somehow unreliable or inconvenient. A child who expresses fear or confusion may be told to stop being dramatic. A child who voices anger may be instructed to be polite. A child who senses dishonesty may be told not to be rude. These responses are often given with good intentions, but the cumulative effect is profound. The child gradually internalizes the message that internal signals cannot be trusted. Slowly, layer by layer, the instinctive connection between feeling and expression becomes distorted. And by the time adulthood arrives, many people have become fluent in navigating the external world, while remaining strangers to their own inner experience. To awaken authentic inner signals, one must first acknowledge how deeply intertwined they are with the body. Modern culture often treats emotions as mental events, located somewhere in abstract thought. But emotions are biological phenomena. They arise from physiological shifts, neural circuits, hormonal messages, and ancient systems designed to protect and inform us. When you feel uneasy around someone, your body may be detecting subtle cues that your conscious mind has not yet processed. When you feel drained by a certain environment, your nervous system may be signaling overstimulation. When you feel drawn toward a certain path, your cognitive and affective processes may be aligning to hint at coherence. These signals are not mystical, they are data, biological data. Yet many people dismiss them because they conflict with social narratives or expected behaviors. Awakening authentic inner signals requires learning to interpret these subtle data streams without immediately censoring them. There is a significant challenge in this process. Modern life is filled with so much noise that the quiet signals of the body and mind often become drowned out. From constant digital stimulation to social demands to economic pressures, attention is pulled outward relentlessly. The nervous system adapts by tuning out internal noise to focus on external tasks. But what begins as adaptation can become habit, and what becomes habit can become identity. The result is an individual who is efficient, functioning, productive, socially integrated, yet profoundly disconnected from their own inner reality. Awakening inner signals demands intentional space, moments of silence, reflection, slowness, or embodied awareness that allow the subtle voice within to be heard again. Many people assume that inner signals, once awakened, will always be comforting or pleasant. But inner signals are not designed for comfort. They are designed for truth. Sometimes that truth reveals dissatisfaction with the path you have committed to. Sometimes it reveals unresolved wounds or unexpressed needs. Sometimes it reveals that a relationship is draining you, or that a dream you have been chasing no longer belongs to you. Awakening inner signals means facing the possibility that your life, built through years of decisions, compromises, and obligations, may not align with your deeper self. This realization can be unsettling. It can threaten the structures that give you a sense of stability. But ignoring the signals does not erase them. It only buries them deeper until they resurface as stress, numbness, anxiety, or emotional fatigue. Listening to authentic inner signals requires learning the difference between instinct and impulse. Instinct is the body's ancient intelligence, shaped by millions of years of evolution. It is subtle, calm, and persistent. Impulse, by contrast, is often urgent, reactive, and shaped by short-term desires or fears. Many people confuse the two and assume that awakening inner signals means following every emotional flash that arises. But awakening is not impulsivity, it is discernment. It is learning to distinguish the quiet strength of intuition from the loud impulses of habit or fear. This distinction takes time because a mind accustomed to external guidance may struggle to interpret its own messages accurately. But with repeated practice, a kind of inner literacy develops. This inner literacy is essential for a stable life. Consider how many decisions in the modern world are made based on pressure rather than authenticity. People choose careers based on safety or prestige rather than alignment. They enter relationships based on social timing rather than genuine resonance. They adopt beliefs based on community expectations rather than personal conviction. They perform emotions to maintain harmony rather than express what they actually feel. The result is often a life that looks successful from the outside while feeling hollow from within. Awakening inner signals disrupts this pattern by reintroducing internal truth as a factor in decision-making. It allows a person to evaluate choices not only through logic or social norms, but through genuine internal alignment. One of the first steps in awakening inner signals is recognizing the subtle bodily sensations that accompany emotional truth. These sensations differ from person to person, but they follow certain biological principles. The body relaxes in the presence of authenticity. The breath deepens, the chest feels open, the muscles soften. In contrast, when a person is acting against their truth, the body shows signs of tension, shallow breathing, tightness in the jaw, pressure in the chest, heaviness in the limbs, or a vague sense of dissonance. These signals are not random, they are manifestations of the nervous system responding to alignment or misalignment. The challenge is that many people have learned to ignore these sensations, to override them with willpower, rationalization, or social obligation. Awakening inner signals means rebuilding sensitivity to these cues. With increased sensitivity comes increased honesty. When you begin to listen to your inner signals, you may discover that certain people exhaust you. You may find that certain jobs drain your vitality. You may finally notice the relationships in which you silence yourself. You may recognize the dreams that no longer inspire you. You may realize that the goals you've been chasing were inherited rather than chosen. These realizations are not failures, they are gateways. I open the path toward a life that reflects your inner world rather than conceals it. But moving through these gateways requires a willingness to feel discomfort. Authenticity often begins with unease because the truth destabilizes the structures built on avoidance. Many people fear awakening their inner signals because they worry it will lead them to abandon responsibilities or disrupt relationships. But awakening does not demand drastic action. It demands clarity. Clarity reveals which responsibilities are sustainable and meaningful, and which ones are draining and unnecessary. It reveals which relationships nurture growth and which ones silence the self. It reveals how much of your life is built on alignment and how much on performance. But clarity does not force immediate change. It merely illuminates what has been hidden. You can choose the pace at which you respond. Inner awakening is not a revolution, it is a gradual returning to oneself. Another essential aspect of awakening inner signals is recognizing the role of silence. Modern environments rarely allow silence. Not just external silence, but internal silence. The mind is constantly bombarded with information, opinions, obligations, distractions, comparisons, and noise. In this environment, the subtle voice of intuition is easily overshadowed. To awaken inner signals, one must intentionally create pockets of stillness, even if only for a few moments each day. This is not about escaping the world, but about making our for the signals that have always existed beneath the noise. Silence allows the nervous system to recalibrate. It allows the emotional landscape to become visible. It allows the body's intelligence to re-enter awareness. Beyond silence, awakening inner signals also requires honesty in communication. When you begin to express your real emotions, calmly, respectfully, without exaggeration, you strengthen the connection between inner feeling and outer expression. This alignment reinforces the integrity of your inner signals. Every time you speak a truth that you previously suppressed, you teach your nervous system that authenticity is safe. Every time you express a boundary you used to ignore, you strengthen your sense of agency. Every time you stop pretending in a situation where you used to perform, you deepen your connection to your own reality. Authentic communication acts as a bridge between the inner world and the outer world. As this inner awakening unfolds, something unexpected happens. The world around you begins to change. Not because the world has changed, but because your perception has. You start noticing subtle emotional cues in others. You become more attuned to sincerity and insincerity. You recognize when someone is speaking from their truth or from their fear. You detect tension in places you once overlooked. You learn to feel the energy in environments, conversations, and relationships. This heightened sensitivity is not a burden, it is a form of intelligence. It allows you to navigate life with greater precision and depth. Awakening inner signals also redefines the meaning of strength. Many people believe that strength means suppressing emotions, maintaining control, or staying unaffected, but true strength lies in awareness, not suppression. It lies in acknowledging internal truths without being overwhelmed by them. It lies in allowing emotions to inform decisions without dictating them. It lies in balancing instinct and intellect rather than choosing one over the other. When inner signals are awake, strength becomes a form of grounded presence rather than rigid control. This awakening also reshapes relationships. When you are connected to your inner signals, you form deeper connections with others. The quality of your presence changes. People feel they can be themselves with you because they sense that you are being yourself as well. Conversations become more genuine, even if they are less polished. Conflicts become opportunities for understanding rather than battles for dominance. Vulnerability becomes a shared human experience rather than a source of shame. Relationships built on authenticity may be fewer, but they are infinitely richer. One of the most transformative aspects of awakening inner signals is the shift from reactivity to responsiveness. When you are disconnected from your inner reality, you react automatically to situations driven by fear, habit, or unresolved emotion. But when your inner signals are awake, you are respond with awareness. You notice your emotional state before acting. You understand your triggers, not as weaknesses, but as messages. You interpret conflict as information rather than threat. This shift reduces the chaos of life and increases your sense of agency. Yet, awakening is never a one-time event. It is a continuous unfolding. There will be moments when the signals are clear, and moments when they feel muddled. There will be times when you follow them with confidence, and times when you fall back into old habits of suppression. But each moment of awareness strengthens the overall connection. Inner awakening is a practice, not a destination. What makes this journey profoundly meaningful is that it reconnects you with the original intelligence that guided humanity long before modern systems shaped our behaviors. It reconnects you with your natural ability to sense, interpret, choose, and align. It restores a kind of inner dignity that cannot be derived from external recognition. It allows you to experience life not just as a sequence of obligations, but as an unfolding relationship between your inner world and the outer world. It quiets the inner chaos created by years of self-silencing. It brings coherence to a life that may have felt fragmented. It allows you to inhabit your own existence fully, without apology or pretense, and without waiting for permission from the structures that once taught you to doubt your own signals.